let's talk about data types. Data types. Now, previously we spoke about variables and constants, right? And we said that a variable is basically a location in memory that can hold data. Now, there are different types of data that variables and constants can hold, and we're going to look at them today. Now, there are four types we're going to look at. The first one being integers. Now, an integer, these are basically whole numbers. They could be both positive or negative without decimal places. Example would be -5, 10, 15, -30, etc. So positive and negative values without decimal places. The second data type, the floating point, or real numbers. Now these are positive or negative numbers with decimal places. Example, 0.55, -5.6, 6.7, etc. Third, we have characters. A character is anything that you can key in from your keyboard. These include letters, numbers, special characters, etc. So we could have the letter Y, the number 7, the @ symbol, 2, etc. Anything we can key in from our keyboard. Now the last one is strings or literals. Now these are basically multiple characters. Alright. Now if I have Maya, this is a combination of the letters of the characters M, Y, and A. So when I put them together, I have multiple characters, and these are called strings. Okay. Now let's talk about representing algorithms. Whenever you are developing algorithms, they are usually divided into three main steps. The first step, this would be the input step. Step 1, input step. This is where the instructions from the user are being gathered. Step 2, the process step. Now in this step, the instructions are walked through. It can involve all or some of the following steps. So in step 2, you can have assignments. Okay. Now for assignment, this is basically where values are placed inside of variables. So when you think of assignment, it's basically where a variable is given a value. Decisions, this step will be included when you have to check for any conditions to be followed, usually if statements, and we'll look at these later on. And we have a repetition, when you have to repeat a task or a specified number of times. When you have to repeat the task a specified number of times, then you would include this step. Now we usually use the for loop and the while do loop. We also have the repeat until loop. We'll look at these later on as well. And the last step, which is step 3, we have the output step. Now in this step, this is where we usually display the results. Okay, now let's look at ways in which you could represent algorithms. Now we will be learning to represent algorithms in the form of narratives, pseudocode, and flowcharts. Okay. Now we usually begin with narratives because it's closest to English. Narrative, also called general algorithm, is where each step in the algorithm is written in clear, simple language. It does not use any computer language or coding. Now for a first example, we're going to find the sum of three numbers. So I'm going to show you how that could be represented in the form of an algorithm. So let's erase. Probably should never. Okay, let's write back narrative. Okay. Now we said that we have these steps when it comes to developing an algorithm. Step 1 is usually the input step. Then we have the process step. Then we have the output step. Now we usually create what we call an IPO chart. IPO, input, processing, output. Okay. Now the input is where the instructions from the user are gathered. So if we want to find the sum of three numbers, what do we need? Well, that's simple. If you want to find the sum of three numbers, then obviously we will need three numbers. And what would be our output? Or the result rather? Well, our result should be the sum of these three numbers. Okay? Now we're going to fill in the process step. Now you need to think, what do I need to do with these three numbers in order to get to this section, the output? Well, first, I need to get the three numbers or accept them. Then I need to add them. So I say add the three numbers. Then I store the result. Store results in. Now this is where the assignment comes in. So I'm going to store the result in a variable called sum, S-U-M. This is my variable name. And then I display the sum as my output. Okay? Now let's do that in steps. So I say step 1, I start. Step 2, I get three numbers. Add the three numbers. Step 4, store the results. Results in the variable called sum. This is my variable name. 5, display sum. And step 6, stop. Now remember this must be in our algorithm. We have to ensure that we terminate. This is a characteristic of an algorithm. It must terminate after a certain number of steps. Alright. Now for get, you can also say accept 3 numbers. And for display, you can also say print or output. So you can say print sum or output sum. Now I want you to try these. Find the product of 2 numbers, and the second one, find the average of 3 numbers. So you're going to do these, I will mark them as soon as you hand them in.